All right, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. All right, folks, welcome back to the podcast. Very excited to have as my guest today, Colleen Ryan-Hensley. Colleen, welcome.
Thanks, Guy. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. So Colleen Ryan-Hensley is a 10-year Navy veteran, an advocate for mental health, an expert in mental toughness who created the online educational resource, BingingSober. Colleen struggled with depression since she was a teenager, and instead of expressing her feelings and getting help, she was taught, quote, to rub some dirt on it and get back in the game. To cope with depression, she started drinking and going on long runs to escape the things that hurt her. When she joined the Navy, she brought this mental toughness and physical toughness with her. Sure, it was the perfect combo for being a great sailor, but not so great for relationships, health, and overall well-being. It was until well after her Navy days that she started focusing more on the feelings that she kept bottled up and peeling away the decades of toughness she had built up around her. Today, she shows others how to avoid making these costly decisions and live a balanced life where escape and reality can live in harmony. Colleen, welcome.
Thanks, Guy.
So before we go in here, share with the listeners where you're from originally and where you are currently.
I am from a little town called Cologne, about 10 miles west of Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Oh, cool. Okay.
So South Jersey. Mm-hmm.
Where are you living now?
I'm outside of Houston. I'm just southwest of Houston in a beautiful, beautiful city called Richmond. We've been here for about 6 months. I've spent most of the last decade in North Texas.
Okay. All right. So how the heck did all this start for you?
All of what, Guy?
How did we get here? How did you get here?
It's quite a long story.
Yeah, let's go. I'm ready.
So as you said, I did suffer a lot with depression as a teenager. It was the mid 80s. We weren't really having these conversations, Guy. Like nobody was talking about this. I thought as a teenager that there was something wrong. I'm giving air quotes for those who can't see me, wrong if I had to see a counselor right at that point. My parents didn't know what was wrong with me. Nobody really knew. My parents' marriage was on the rocks for a while, for a lot of my childhood. And it was actually when they decided to separate that things got better at home. That was around the time I started using alcohol. I would hit my dad's stash that he left in the basement to feel better. I thought I was, trying to feel better. Obviously, that doesn't work very well.
Right.
Depression. And it wasn't long after my father left that my grandfather passed away. Now, I was inspired by his sea stories. That's why I eventually joined the Navy. I always wanted to. Mm-hmm. And he passed away unexpectedly, and he was my, main male role model. And I really just didn't know what to do with any of these feelings. And so leaned on alcohol more. Thankfully, I discovered long distance running around the same time. So
and how old were you at this point?
14, 15.
Okay. Let me just interject if I may. So are you, and I know it's hard and difficult to make correlations like this, but are you correlating your depression to what was going on at home?
Yes. And I think really, I was making it now, of course, I can see I was making it worse with the drinking. I was making it worse by avoiding these things and not, talking about them. But yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Proceed, please.
Okay. So, I found long distance running. It actually came after a fight with my mom. I just put on my running shoes and took off. And that was the first time I ran over probably 3 miles. I ran about 8.
Wow.
I remember it like it was 5 seconds ago because I felt so much better afterwards. And I just continued to run. So that was a big thing that I was leaning on at the time for my own mental health, really. Since I wasn't, getting any other support because I didn't know how to. I didn't, like I said, we weren't really talking about that sort of thing. So it wasn't until I was 21 that I really felt mentally and physically like tough enough to join the Navy. I hadn't let that go. I was distracted for a while with boyfriends and things and, more drinking and partying in my social life. But I did. I joined the Navy at 21 and really adopted the toughness of the Navy. I really embraced that culture and was a great sailor. At that point, I'd started using visualization and all these mental skills before I went to boot camp to like prepare myself to boot camp. I didn't really know what I was doing at the time. But that's what I was doing. Well, the drunken sailor stereotype is very, very accurate, or was I can't speak for the Navy right now, but I can speak for, the late 90s when I joined. And, as a subculture of society, we can talk about the, excess and access to alcohol and the, acceptance of it socially. And I mean, I imagine it's probably pretty similar still in the Navy these days. And the culture, really just kind of, added to my already, my use of alcohol. When I was 22, so about 22 years ago, 23 years ago, I got really drunk at a party with most of the people that I knew were there. There was about half and half. So half people that I knew and then a whole bunch of people that I didn't. And I experienced a sexual assault that I took full responsibility for because I had so much to drink. I didn't report it. I faced the people the next training day that we had. I told them to forget about it, just like I would, and didn't think about it for 15 years. I mean, that's how far
you're still in the Navy.
Pushed it away.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you
say fantastic Navy career.
When you say you took full responsibility for it, what do you mean?
In the moment, because I blacked out, woke up the next day, I was still in the house where all of these people were. I was alone. I woke up, realized what had happened. I was incredibly hungover, still very, disoriented, but it was this, like, I'm not going to jeopardize any of what is going on in, my life right now, my Navy career, by reporting this. This is on me. Nobody forced me to drink that much. Like, I did it myself. I lost all of my control. I lost all of my awareness. So that I just put on myself.
So you blamed yourself for the sexual assault?
Blamed myself. Yep. Okay. Yeah. And like I said, I faced the guys that were at the party the next training day, which was, I think that was like a Saturday or a Sunday. So it was that Monday that I walked into their classroom, had a very big kind of growing up moment. Like, I'm going to, just face this right now, and told them that I didn't want to hear anybody talking about it and that I was going to forget about it, and I wanted them to. And that's the last I thought about it. That's the last I thought about it until I got out of the Navy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
No, until I got out of the Navy, that was when I started experiencing flashbacks and things. So prior to that, didn't even cross my mind. If it did, it was so quick, I don't know. I couldn't tell you. My Navy career was fantastic after that. I did, from this side of it, I can see how much that really created or emphasized this toughness, like this tough exterior. My attitude toward the people that I worked with on ships, and I was extremely professional. I wouldn't cross any kind of, for example, I was very bubbly and positive, but since that can be misinterpreted, I became very stoic, very just forthright business. If anybody got out of line around me, I would make them know that I wasn't going to deal with that. That was my boundary. And so, in hindsight, I can see how much that impacted me in maybe even making, the next 10 years easier in a way, because I had that tough exterior. So I wouldn't let a lot of that, any of that happen around me anymore. And I stopped drinking as much, especially when I traveled. It was when I was at home in port that I would still party. Okay. And so that has to do with #BingingSober. What I'm sharing right now, with, the world, is that I discovered kind of I won't say by accident, but it was my time at sea and this drastic difference in quality of life and clear-headedness that I experienced when I didn't have access to these things that I was using to escape alcohol, or beyond that, all of these other mind-numbing unhealthy habits that we tend to lean on. So it was a process that I took with me outside of the military. I would start to essentially pretend like I was at sea, because I realized I was longing for that mental state that I experienced out there. Now, sure, we can talk about the calmness and the peace and the serenity of the ocean, but a large majority of that time I was locked inside the ship. We were in combat zones. So you're not like, relaxing on a sun, deck in your lounge chair. You're inside a warship.
Right.
So, there was pieces of that, but.
So at what point, Colleen, did you begin to realize did you begin to become symptomatic? Did you begin to realize that you were experiencing symptoms? How soon after you got out?
It was within, I would say, a couple of years. It still took a while, and it was just little flashbacks at first. When I started therapy, because I huge mental health advocate, I was studying performance psychology. That's my degree, is in performance psychology, so methods for peak performance, very strength-based stuff. But I really, I started professional counseling, like with a therapist, pretty soon after, probably within a year of the military. But I was really focused on, okay, I need more structure in my life. Let's talk about goal setting. Let's, like that kind of stuff, because I missed that structure. I missed the mission, the big mission of the military, feeling that camaraderie and that sense of purpose. So that was really the stuff that I was working on. And of course, we all know that we can go to therapy with this, hey, this goal, but we started peeling back the layers. And that is when, like, once I started working through all the stuff on top, that's when the flashbacks really started coming in and ruining my sleep, like night terrors and, flashbacks during the day. And then it took me another couple of years working with the same therapist for me to even say it to her.
Okay. So at what point did your therapist say, he or she, something is underlying this? Did he or she ask you? Had you ever? Okay.
Well, funny that you asked that, because I was asked when I got out of the military. We have to do out processing, right. And I saw a psychiatrist, and that psychiatrist asked me. And when she did, and I know this now, but I didn't think about it at the time, she asked me if I'd ever been harassed or assaulted in the Navy. And I said, well, that depends on your perspective, what that means. And she was like, what? And I said, I didn't let anybody, get under my skin, essentially. And so it's that mental toughness, our idea of mental toughness, and that rub some dirt on it and get back in the game. That really blocked me from healing for a very, very long time. That's why it's been, part of my mission, or my main mission, to redefine what that means. Because going back and healing is the tough part, right? So I was seeing my counselor for a while, and it was actually, I almost told her, and then I stopped seeing her for about a year. Now, there were other things going on in my life. I became a full-time caregiver for my father-in-law at that point. And so I was still continuing counseling, but I was seeing somebody more of like the caregiver support side of things. And also it was very protective, because I didn't want to become a victim. I didn't want to say, hey, I was assaulted, I was raped. I mean, it was so hard for me to say the R word for so long. And so when I did go back to her, about a year later, when I did go back to her, because I was ready now, I just experienced taking care of someone who eventually passed away. So it was a very, existential experience for me. And I knew I needed to continue to heal. And so when I went back to her, the first thing, I remember it like it was 2 seconds ago, I said, do you remember what I asked you, or what I told you before I left last time? And she said, yes, you said that you may have been raped in the Navy. I never said that, Guy. I said, I think I might have been taken advantage of, because I couldn't say the words. But when she said that, I was like, oh my gosh, it was like this moment. And then I said it back to her, and that was very healing for me, just to even say it. Like, it was just like 1,000,000 pounds had left my body. I became like a totally different person. But what helped me is she started studying internal family systems, parts work. And that I really related to. Like, I was really, out of all the modalities and things that I, experimented with over time with different therapists, it was parts work that really.
What about that, Colleen?
Well, I have always been a very visual person. Like I said, I practiced imagery before I went into boot camp. So I've always had, that skill. I developed that over time. And so when she said that, it's like I'd already been familiar with the different parts that I felt that were inside of me. And so when she said that, I felt like, oh my gosh, that makes total sense. Like, I just really, really, really grabbed onto that. And so it also helped me with the trauma to see it as just another part that I could honor and heal and kind of put outside of me. Like,
right.
You can explain it better than I can.
You didn't have to identify with it. I mean, for me, I really appreciate what you're saying, and I really like it, IFS, because I find a lot of kind of comfort and solace in saying it's this part of me.
Yeah, me too.
It's not all of me. It's not me.
Yes.
It's this part of me over here.
Yeah. Ever since I've been using parts work, and it's changed my life. It really.
Wow. Wow. So first of all, I just want to really say how much I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story. It's really intense. I mean, and to see how you were able to kind of compartmentalize to survive. I mean, you survived. At what point did you say to yourself, okay, you know what? I want to create this program, Binging Sober. How did that come about?
I left the Navy about 12 years ago, which is insane to me, but I've been out now longer than I was in. I was in for almost 11. And so throughout, my own healing journey, the process that I'm calling #BingingSober is something that I've practiced myself. And it's helped me alongside professional therapy, and sometimes, breaks from therapy. So in between, it's really helped me gain awareness, control, and balance of those escapisms that I think a lot of times we just habitually lean on and don't see how they're impacting our mental health and don't see how they're impacting our energy. And so over time, and especially during the pandemic, that's when I was like, okay, there is something to this. And I really, really think it needs to be shared. And on this I don't want to say the other side of healing, but I really do, obviously I'm still managing depression. I manage PTS, but I've used this process to help me manage that. And so I believe that it's these, the habitual use of mind numbing, unhealthy escapisms that is the biggest threat to our mental health as a society, because these things are so available in excess and they're so socially acceptable that we don't often stop and question the use of them.
So with Binging Sober, did you want to bring light to our use of this? And so be specific about what you wanted to do when you said, okay, I want to create this program.
So I've always leaned on alcohol, as I've said, and it took those periods of sobriety at sea and then beyond the Navy. Like I said, I would practice that. I would say, hey, maybe I'll lay off of this for a while and get some of that clarity back to my life. Well, then I noticed all these other things that I was using. And
like what?
Like television. I love horror and thriller, TV shows and movies. Well, that would trigger a lot of times nightmares for me and destroy my sleep, which would lead into, caffeine abuse, and would lead into other things. And there were multiple times that throughout my life, I, have struggled with suicidal thoughts. And I, that's one of the things that we really need to talk about more. What you're doing, I greatly appreciate it. I mean, all of these things need to be normalized so people feel okay talking about them.
Right.
And I mean, I lied every time a therapist asked me that question until I found parts work, until I was able to see it as not this whole part, just a part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so in #BingingSober, it's really about, like I said, gaining awareness, control, and balance of these things that are draining our energy, and using and replacing them with other things that restore our energy, natural escape. And I mean, for all of this, it's like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like we can work out, we can eat well, we can, all of these different, wellness tactics. But it's one thing to know them, and then another thing to make it, to do them and make it an objective, like self-intervention, ongoing practice toward longstanding change. And that's what it's about.
And at some point too, right, we have to realize that we are utilizing these things as distractions, but also at some point we have to take the magnifying glass or the light and look at, maybe for the first time, what we haven't looked at in years.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. Who is Binging Sober for? It's
for everyone, especially since the pandemic. I'm sure you've seen the stats on depression, anxiety, suicide. These numbers are just out of control. And you just said it, we're so distracted. With that distraction comes a lack of connection to ourselves, to everybody else. Isolation and loneliness are through the roof right now and wreaking further havoc on our mental health, our brain health, our, everything. And so really it's for anyone that finds themselves saying, hey, time is flying by. I don't feel good about, what I'm doing with my time. It's for all of those people out there that the sober curious, who are questioning, their relationship with alcohol. That movement is huge right now. I love it. And they're questioning their relationship with alcohol, but I want to take it one step further. And let's question our relationship with all of these mind-numbing habits. Now, of course, alcohol is toxic inherently. With all of these other things that we're abusing and overusing that are destroying our health and our mental health just as much, and a lot of times happen along with the abuse of the alcohol and other things.
I'm wondering, and I'm curious about if other women veterans have reached out to you, and your story is in a sense frightening. I mean, and sad that you had to endure, that you had to shove that down. I mean, a lot of people shove down their trauma, and did it for years, but you did. It's almost like you had to.
In the moment, I didn't even consider like what I was doing. Obviously, I was young, I was very young, and I knew that I was where I wanted to be in my life. And that was just this isolated incident that, I really, at this point, the reason that is such a huge part of this story with #BingingSober is the mental toughness. Like, our idea as a society of what it means to be tough is half-baked, and it's not good.
Say more about that.
We are excusing, or we are not embracing half of the spectrum of emotions, these things that we consider negative and bad, and these things that yes, they're very painful to face, but that's only because we've made it not a natural part of life or a natural part of living a whole life. And so, yes, it's important to have resilience. And that's where our focus has been with mental toughness, is resilience in the face of stress. That's very, very important. This country, especially right now, is very stressful. The world, living life is challenging and stressful. So it's important to have that resilience. But imagine if we all felt comfortable, if it was just the way we did things, is to go back and process and process that residual energy, the trauma, the pain, what we're perceiving as negative. Oh my gosh, I don't want to go back there. Well, that's where our beautiful life is. That's what I've discovered in all of this healing, is that mental toughness kept me from it helped me repress it, and it kept me from facing it for so long. And when I finally did, that became addictive in of itself. Like, ooh, what else can I uncover and fix? Because that felt really good. Like I'm living a life that I have never lived in my 40s, because I got rid of that weight, that pressure, that just huge block in my life. It was destroying my relationships. I was not a nice person after the rape. I was not a nice person. I don't like the person I became because of it, but I didn't realize it at the time, and a lot of us are walking around with this toxic, pain living inside of us, because we're scared to go back. Going back and healing it is the tough part. That should be mental toughness. Both of them together, the resilience and the processing of the pain.
Yeah, beautifully said there. What would you say to someone who maybe is in your same position? Maybe they're in the services right now.
Yeah.
What would have happened had you reported that at that time?
It's so tough to say, because things have definitely changed in the military since then, but it would have changed a lot of my direction. I was top in my class in a very highly technical job. They had already spent tons of money training me. Like, I was very excited to finally go to a ship, which was coming soon. And it would have been a long investigation. It would have been, who knows, Guy? I mean, there's so many different, I don't know. Now, not too much later, within a couple of years, another female on my ship was involved in a situation that there's still a lot of, question marks around, but I mean, it impacted her entire career. She ended up leaving the Navy pretty soon after. And so, there's just no way to really know how the specific leadership would have dealt with it. There's just no way.
And I guess from an outsider's perspective, that's kind of the scary part, because in a sense, it seems like, well, if you do report it, it's going to screw things up, but you don't know what the healing process is going to look like, right?
Yeah.
You know that it's potentially ruin your carear.
Yeah. Now there's, like I said, a lot has changed since then. I know that there have been a lot of policy changes. I know that they were working on making it so civilian systems would deal with those specific cases, so it didn't have to stay within the military and wasn't necessarily going to impact your career. That's sort of stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So to get back to my question, what would you say to someone who maybe is in that position now?
Like in the military right now? Oh my gosh, it's so much easier now to get mental health support. Before, you had to report it to your command. Like, if I were to see somebody, I would have to report it to my command. That is no longer the case. So if I, were to tell someone, that's in that position, well, first of all, Guy, what if they're repressing it and they don't, they could be repressing it and not know. So same story, I would say, hey, go get some support. It's my dream for everyone to be more proactive and preventative with mental health, because right now I think, and I mean, what's your, opinion on this? I feel like that we wait too long and end up in crisis. Like, that's not the time to seek mental health. Like, if we all had the support prior to, which again, if that were just the way we were doing things, I mean, that's obviously a kind of a pipe dream. I mean, there's a lot of things involved in that, insurance and, the system and all of these things. So, but I would hope that, if they maybe think that something happened, or if they know, that they would seek outside mental health, professional mental health support.
Okay. Awesome. There. Speaking with Colleen Ryan-Hensley. What's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Colleen?
The easiest way is BingingSober.com. You'll find links to my socials. You'll have a contact form. You can write to me.
Okay. And So if someone is interested, who should come to Binging Sober?
Well, right now it's no cost access for, at least through March. I'm going to keep all of the content accessible forever and ever. Anyone who is questioning their relationship with any of these mind-numbing escapisms that you think are, might be impacting your life, let's go ahead and investigate that, because it's life-changing to look beneath the surface and pull apart those things that might be covering up your gorgeous life underneath.
Now, are you
real
offering courses or groups or what specifically?
I do have a private Facebook group right now. That's the community we have that will always be there.
Okay.
And coming in the next few weeks, the point system is going to launch. So anybody can go to BingingSober.com and access that as well. And that's just a really objective way to measure these things that you're using and maybe overusing, and discover how they're truly impacting your life, and then create balance around it.
Appreciate that. Colleen, man, super inspiring. I mean,
Thanks.
just to hear you're welcome, to hear your story and to see you on the other side of it. And I'm going to put something together to help people get through this crap.
Yeah.
It's intense stuff, man.
Yeah, I thank you for having me. I appreciate all that you do, and just having these conversations. 12-year-old me is cheering on our mental health community. That's and all of us. I'm so glad we're finally talking about these things and making this information accessible. It's so important to the healing of ourselves and the world, really.
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate it. Well, look, I'd love to have you back at a later date,
Sure,
continue our conversation, and just thank you so much for being here and coming on. All right, take care.
Thank you so much for having me.